The moment Jake Mallister saw the broken wagons scattered across the Wyoming Trail, he knew something terrible had happened. The air was too still, the crows circled too low. The land itself seemed to hold its breath. Jake slowed his tired mare and stared at the splintered wood and torn canvas ahead. It felt like the world was warning him to turn back. But he could not. Not a man like him. Jake carried grief the way other men carried rifles. Heavy. Always ready. 2 years had passed since his wife Sarah died. Yet the weight of her ring, hanging from a rawhide cord around his neck, kept that loss alive every day. He worked his failing ranch alone now. The land fought him at every turn, the cattle herd shrinking, the debts rising, the nights long and cold. He wondered many times if God had simply forgotten his name. Still, he pressed on. A man with a promise in his heart does not quit. As he neared the wreckage, a chill crawled up his spine. The wagon was overturned. Wood cracked like bones. The canvas cover was ripped with clean bullet holes. Blood streaked the dirt. The smell hit him next. Old iron and dust, and something far worse. Death. He dismounted and tied his mare to a broken post. Every movement felt slow, as if he feared disturbing the quiet horror before him. Jake checked the bodies one by one. 4 men lay scattered like tossed dolls, each with wounds that spoke of a fast and merciless attack. He knelt beside a young man no older than 20. Dust covered the boy's face. His eyes stared blankly at the sky. Jake bowed his head, grief pressing into him. He could not help them. Not anymore. A cold wind rattled the torn canvas overhead. Empty crates lay busted open on the ground, their contents looted or spilled. The scene told a clear story. Bandits. Attack at dawn. No mercy given. Jake turned to walk away when something faint touched his ear, a sound soft as a breath. He stilled. Then he heard it again. A weak, broken moan. He spun around, heart pounding. Someone was alive. He stepped carefully around the wagon's far side. There she was, a woman half buried under a shattered crate. Dirt streaked her skin, her dress torn and stained with blood. Her hair tangled like straw across the ground. She lay on her side, breathing shallow and weak. Jake lifted the crate off her. She flinched hard, eyes snapping open in panic. Terror washed across her face. She looked at him as if she expected the next shot to come from his hand. He lowered his voice to a soft tone he had not used in years. "You are all right," he said. "I'm here to help you." She tried to speak, but her voice was nothing more than a rasp. He slid an arm behind her shoulders and gently raised her up. He pressed his canteen to her lips. "Easy now. Drink slow." Water dripped down her chin. Her eyes fluttered as she swallowed. She trembled from pain and shock. Jake could see a deep bruise along her arm, a cut across her forehead, and a bullet graze along her shoulder. Whoever attacked the wagon wanted her dead too. But there was something odd about her. Her clothes, though filthy, were made of fine material, the stitching delicate. Not something a typical settler woman wore. Her accent, when she whispered, was crisp and shaped by distant places. "They came at dawn," she murmured. "Bandits, I think. They killed everyone." Jake nodded. "I'm sorry. I truly am." She closed her eyes, tears slipping through. He tore a strip of fabric from his shirt and tied it across her shoulder wound. He had done many rough things in his life, but he had never been careless with the hurting. Not after Sarah. "We need a doctor," he said. "Closest is Medicine Bow Station. I'll get you there." She gave a faint nod before collapsing against him, her body limp with exhaustion. Jake lifted her carefully into his arms. She weighed so little it made his chest ache. He carried her to his mare and seated her gently in front of him. He searched the rubble for anything useful. A half canteen, a few biscuits, a small trunk. Inside the dust he found a cameo brooch carved with a family crest he did not recognize. Something about it felt important. He pocketed it, planning to return it when she recovered. Then he mounted his horse, holding her steady against him as he rode toward Medicine Bow. The journey was slow. The sun, cruel. The land, dry as old bone. With every mile, he kept asking himself the same question. Who is she? Why would anyone seek to kill a woman who dressed like that and spoke with an accent like that? By late afternoon, they reached the small settlement. Jake hurried to the office of Dr. Wilford Graham. Together they laid the unconscious woman on a narrow cot. Dr. Graham examined her with quick, steady hands. "She will live," Dr. Graham said after stitching her shoulder and bandaging her wounds. "She needs rest and food, but she will pull through." Jake felt a breath leave him, relief heavier than he expected. That night he sat beside her cot, watching her breathe. The little doctor's office creaked and groaned. A lantern flickered outside. Jake thought of Sarah and how helpless he had felt as she slipped away years before. Not again, he told himself. When dawn came, the woman stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, confused by the small room and the dull light. She reached for her shoulder and winced. Jake leaned forward, voice gentle. "Morning. You are safe. You are in Medicine Bow." She blinked, studying him. Her eyes were bright, even in exhaustion. "I think I owe you my life," she whispered. He shook his head. Anyone would have done the same. But he knew that was not true. Many would have ridden past. He offered her a cup of water. "What's your name?" She hesitated. A flicker of fear crossed her face. Then she said softly, "Charlotte. Charlotte Ashby." Jake nodded, though something in her tone felt odd. There was weight behind her name, a secret she was not ready to reveal. But he did not push her. "Dr. Graham says you need weeks to heal," Jake said. "I live near Sage Creek. My ranch is quiet. You can recover there if you want." She looked into his eyes. Searching, fearing, hoping. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will go with you." Jake helped her stand. He paid the doctor with what little money he had left. Then he lifted her onto his horse and set off toward his ranch. The journey stretched across rolling hills and open plains. Charlotte winced with each step of the horse, yet she never complained. Jake noticed her clothes again, the fine fabric, the careful stitching. He noticed how she carried herself with a kind of grace uncommon out here. When the ranch came into view, Charlotte stared at it with quiet awe. Weathered fences. A simple house. A worn barn. A place held together by the stubborn will of a man who refused to quit. Jake helped her inside. He settled her in Sarah's old room, the room that held memories he never thought he would share with anyone again. He stood in the doorway a moment, watching her rest. Something in him shifted, something old and painful and half forgotten. He did not know who she really was. He did not know what hunted her. He did not know how her arrival would change everything. But for the first time in years, Jake felt something like purpose return to his life. Jake Mallister's ranch sat quiet under the Wyoming sun, but inside the cracked walls of the old house, trouble brewed like a storm waiting to strike. Charlotte Ashby rested in Sarah's old room, wrapped in blankets and shadows. Though her wounds were healing, she carried a fear deeper than the cuts on her skin. Jake sensed it each time she looked toward the windows, as if expecting someone to ride out of the dusk and finish what had begun on that broken wagon trail. In the days that followed, Jake fell into a routine. He did chores at dawn, fed the cattle that remained, fixed the fences that had nearly rotted, and checked the water troughs. Charlotte moved slowly through the house, doing what she could, sweeping the floors, washing dishes with her good hand, anything to help. She hated being a burden. But Jake never saw her as one. Still, something about her gnawed at him. She spoke softly, but her words had a sharpness trained by education. She held herself with careful posture even when she winced from pain, and her hands, though bruised, bore no calluses of a woman used to frontier work. She carried a secret. He could feel it. Jake kept that cameo brooch in his pocket everywhere he went. He kept telling himself he would return it when she was ready. But the family crest on the back lingered in his mind. Something told him it was not a simple keepsake. 3 days after bringing her to the ranch, Jake finished repairing the corral and walked toward the house. As he neared the door, he noticed Charlotte sitting on the porch. She watched the horizon with a distant sadness, her hands folded in her lap. When she heard his boots crunch the dirt, she turned and offered a polite smile. "You are pushing yourself too hard," Jake said gently. "You need rest." "I need purpose," she replied quietly. "Resting only lets the memories come back." Jake nodded. He understood that more than she knew. He sat on the porch step near her. For a long moment, neither spoke. The prairie wind rolled past them, carrying a faint scent of sagebrush. At length, Charlotte took a breath. "Jake," she said, her voice steady but troubled, "there is something I must tell you." He turned toward her, waiting. "My name is not Charlotte Ashby." Jake did not flinch. He had expected something like this. She looked down at her hands. "My name is Charlotte Harrington. My mother is the Duchess of Warrington. My family holds lands in England. We traveled the frontier under false names to avoid attention, but someone found out. Someone wanted us dead." She swallowed hard. "The brooch you found belonged to my mother. I was hoping the attackers had not noticed it missing." Jake let the truth settle. It was a lot. Nobility. A duchess's daughter. A life oceans away from his lonely ranch. "You should have told me sooner," he said, but his tone was gentle, not angry. "I was afraid," she whispered. "Afraid you would send me away, afraid you would be caught in danger because of me." Jake shook his head. "You were lying on the ground bleeding. I was not about to leave you there, and now that you're here, I am not turning my back on you." Her eyes softened with relief. "Thank you." Before Jake could say more, the sound of hooves carried across the pasture. 4 riders approached from the road. Jake stood quickly, sensing trouble. He recognized the lead rider, Sheriff Amos Bailey from Sage Creek. A tall man with a silver badge and a sharp eye. Not a lawman you would fool easily. "Stay inside," Jake murmured. Charlotte obeyed at once, slipping inside the house. The riders stopped at the corral. Dust settled at their boots as the sheriff tipped his hat. "Afternoon, Jake," Bailey said. "Word around town is you brought a wounded woman from a massacre in Medicine Bow." Jake nodded slowly. "She's recovering." "We'd like to talk to her," Bailey said. "There are bandits prowling the territory. Folks want answers." Jake hesitated, his jaw clenched. Charlotte's secret pressed heavily against his ribs. Sheriff Bailey noticed the tension and narrowed his eyes. "She is not in trouble," Bailey added. "We just want the truth." Jake reluctantly led them inside. Charlotte stood in the corner, her posture straight and polite. She greeted the sheriff with a calm nod, but Jake saw the fear behind her quiet eyes. Bailey questioned her about the attack. She told the truth, but carefully. She hid her identity. She hid the crest. She hid the danger stalking her across the plains. By the time she finished, Bailey looked suspicious, but not certain. "Let us know if you remember anything else," he said as he prepared to leave. "These men were too organized for common bandits. Someone hired them." After the sheriff left, Charlotte collapsed into a chair, trembling. "He suspects something," she whispered. Jake closed the door behind them. "Let him suspect. He does not know who you really are. And he will not hear it from me." Charlotte looked up, eyes shining with gratitude. "Why do you care so much?" Quote. Jake took a breath. "Because I know what it feels like to lose everything. Because I will not let that happen to you." Days passed with quiet tension. Jake made patrols around the ranch. Charlotte helped where she could. But each sunrise felt thinner, as if danger crept closer with every dawn. One afternoon, Charlotte approached Jake with a request. "I want to send a coded telegram to my mother," she said. "She will understand it. No one else will." Quote. Jake agreed without hesitation and rode to Medicine Bow the next morning. He sent the message exactly as she wrote it. The telegraph operator teased him about sending fancy messages overseas, but Jake ignored him. He returned home before sunset. Charlotte waited on the porch, hands clasped in hope. "Done," Jake said with a small smile. "Your message is on its way." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you, truly." 2 nights later, as the wind screamed across the plains and the lantern flickered weakly, a hard knock sounded at the front door. Jake opened it to find a breathless courier holding a telegram from Medicine Bow. Charlotte rushed to Jake's side as he opened it. They deciphered her mother's coded reply together. The message chilled them both. Suspect betrayal from close circle, danger from within, trust no one. Move cautiously. Protect yourself. Charlotte's face drained of color. Someone near my family is trying to have me killed. It could be my uncle's business partner. Or someone in his circle. Jake clenched his fists. We need to get you somewhere safe. Fort Laramie, maybe. They planned to leave at dawn. But danger arrived first. As they stepped outside to prepare the horses, Jake felt his stomach drop. Footprints in the dirt. Broken twigs. Fresh tracks near the barn. We had company last night, he said grimly. Then the first rifle shot ripped the morning silence apart. A bullet screamed past Charlotte's head and slammed into the barn wall. She gasped and ducked. Jake grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a water trough, just as another shot rang out. They found us, Jake hissed, heart pounding. 6 riders crested the ridge, bandanas. Rifles raised. Jake knew what that meant. They were here for Charlotte. They were here to finish the job. Gunfire thundered across the quiet Wyoming morning as Jake and Charlotte crouched behind the water trough. Splinters flew from the barn wall. Dust filled the air. The bandits had found them, and they were not leaving without blood. Charlotte trembled beside him, clutching her shawl with white knuckles. Jake steadied her shoulder. Stay low, he said. When I move, you run for the corral. Quote, Jake, no, she whispered, shaken. They will kill you. They will kill both of us if we stay here. Before she could protest, Jake bolted from cover and sprinted for the barn. Bullets kicked up dirt around his boots. He slid inside, grabbed his old Winchester 1873 off the wall and racked it with a sharp click. He fired once toward the ridge, forcing a rider to duck. Then, another shot cracked from the ground near the corral. The second rider took aim at Charlotte. Go! Jake yelled. Charlotte ran, keeping her head low. Her feet pounded across the yard as gunshots rang out behind her. She reached the corral shaking, but managed to pull Jake's mare and the spare horse toward her. The animal stamped nervously, pulling against the ropes. Jake fired again, covering her as best as he could. Then he sprinted toward the corral. A bullet grazed his thigh, burning like fire, but he pushed through the pain. Charlotte had already thrown the saddle on the second horse with one hand, fumbling with the straps. Mount, Jake ordered. She climbed up, breathless and scared. Jake leaped onto his mare. The bandits closed in, charging downhill with guns raised. Ride, Jake shouted. They kicked their heels. The horses burst through the open gate, racing across the plains as bullets whipped past their heads. Dust rose behind them. The bandits roared and gave chase. Jake leaned low over his saddle, urging the mare faster. Charlotte rode beside him, fighting to stay steady despite her healing shoulder. They're gaining, she cried. Not for long. Jake veered toward a rocky canyon north of the ranch. It was dangerous, narrow and steep, but it was their only hope. The horses pounded through the canyon entrance as gunshots echoed off the towering walls. Sharp cracks ricocheted like thunder. The bandits followed, firing down at them from the upper ledges. Keep going, Jake said, but the gunfire intensified. One bullet shattered a rock above Charlotte, sending shards flying. She gasped and ducked. Jake scanned the canyon walls. Somewhere high above was a hidden deer trail Sarah once showed him. There, he pointed. A narrow path cut up the rock face. They dismounted and guided the horses on foot. The ground was unstable. Loose stones rolled beneath their boots. Another bullet struck the cliff inches from Charlotte's head. We cannot stay here, she said, breath shaking. Jake pulled her behind a boulder as another volley tore through the canyon. He fired upward, forcing one gunman to retreat. His heart hammered. Then a hard voice echoed across the canyon. Give us the woman and walk away. Jake fired again without hesitation. Charlotte looked at him, tears brimming. They will not stop. Not ever. That is why we keep moving, Jake answered. Just then, more gunfire cracked from above the bandits. But this time it was not aimed at Jake or Charlotte. It was aimed at the attackers. Voices shouted from the canyon rim. Jake looked up and saw silhouettes moving with precision. A small group of cavalrymen and scouts appeared along the upper ridge, firing at the bandits from behind. Among them was a tall scout wearing a decorated rifle stock. Jake recognized him from old stories, a skilled guide who roamed these lands. The ambush worked. The bandits broke rank, scrambling for cover. Within minutes, the canyon fell silent as the attackers fled the opposite direction. Jake and Charlotte climbed to the plateau where the scouts stood. A cavalry lieutenant stepped forward. "Lieutenant Avery, U.S. Cavalry out of Fort Sanders," he said. "We heard gunfire and moved in." Jake shook his hand. "You saved our lives." The lieutenant eyed Charlotte. "We will escort you both to Cheyenne. This territory is not safe." The ride to Cheyenne was tense. The cavalry kept watch while Charlotte rode in shaken silence. When they finally reached the city, they went straight to the territorial governor. After hearing Charlotte's story and reading her mother's message, the governor summoned marshals to arrest the captured bandit. The truth came out that night. A man named Harcourt, her uncle's business partner in London, had hired the bandits. He wanted full control of her family's investments. Charlotte's death would ensure no one uncovered his corruption. Jake felt heat rise in his chest. He tried to kill her for money. Charlotte squeezed his hand. "He failed because of you." At the governor's mansion, Charlotte and Jake stayed under protection while telegrams flew back and forth across the Atlantic. Within days, the British consulate confirmed Harcourt's crimes. For the first time since the massacre, Charlotte breathed easier. One evening, she found Jake standing alone on the balcony, looking at the stars above Cheyenne. She stepped beside him in a soft gown borrowed from the governor's wife. "My mother wants me to return to England," she said quietly. "She wants me to make the scandal public. She wants me to take my place again." Jake nodded, though his chest tightened. "That is your world. You belong with your family." Charlotte turned to him. "What if I do not want that life without you?" Jake swallowed hard. "Charlotte, I am a rancher with dust on his boots and barely enough money to fix a fence. You deserve a life far better than what I can give." She took his hand, voice trembling. "A life without you would not be better." Jake felt something break open inside him. He pulled the rawhide cord from his neck and placed Sarah's ring in Charlotte's palm. "I never thought I could love again," he whispered. "But if you want a life with me, I will spend every day protecting you." She pressed her forehead to his. "I love you, Jake." They kissed under the quiet Wyoming moon. Weeks later, with the danger gone and Harcourt facing justice, Charlotte chose to stay in America. Her mother supported her decision and even invested in Jake's ranch, helping rebuild the barns and fences destroyed in the attack. Then, on a warm afternoon in the small garden behind the ranch house, Charlotte and Jake exchanged vows. No grand feast, no royal guests, just a preacher, the open plains, and a gentle breeze. Charlotte wore a simple dress. Jake placed a new ring on her finger. They smiled through tears as they began their new life together. A widower who had lost everything. A noble woman who had nearly lost her life. Two souls saved by courage and bound by love on the wild frontier. Hope found them on the harshest road, and together they rode toward a future brighter than either had ever believed possible.